Welcome to Us in My Life. Love you and I love you so much. Oh, 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 I just love you. I just like help. I just like help. I just like you too. I just like you. I
You know, we're never letting go. This how we can reach the sky. On a flare, we go higher than high.
Well, somehow we're losing our sound there. But welcome, everybody. This is the Optimize My Life show brought to you by the Hope Collection. And today we have the privilege of listening to Nutrition Essentials with Beth Wyman. And what I love, what Mary wrote on here is Beth shares science, facts, insights, particularly and practical tips and easy to follow strategies. To Beth dives deep into the essential role of nutrition, achieving a healthier, more vibrant life. So that sounds really great. Thank you, Beth, for joining us today, and welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you. It's I like that Mary put the science back piece in there. So I, for the listeners, obviously you were there, Linda, but I did an expo for out in Buffalo with you guys, and when I was being interviewed, one of the things that came up was like, how did I get where I am, right? Like, how do I become a dietitian? And it's a lot of science backing, right? There's a lot of science behind it. It is a degree in nutrition science. It's biochemistry. It's medical nutrition therapy, which is what people tend to think of when they think of dietitians. It's just that medical nutrition therapy component, but there is a background in biochem, metabolism, organic chemistry, anatomy and physiology. And then there's the other side where it's food service management and more of like the planning managerial skills that have to do with literally like running a business and running a kitchen. So there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of different pieces. There's also like program planning for community, right? So planning community interventions to help the health of like the population, which is sort of what led into my master's degree, because I enjoyed that focus on helping more people, right? So there's different levels of intervention. And so what people tend to think of with a dietitian is one-on-one intervention, right? Like coming to see a dietitian for a visit and getting like a nutrition prescription. And so that's considered individual level intervention, right? And then there's other levels of intervention where you might be like making sure that there's more soup kitchens available, so there's more access to food. So that's like a community level intervention. And then there's higher levels of like systemic intervention where you're looking at changing food policy, and so this might be like a school level where maybe you're getting things changed in the school district with what can be served, or at a state level with what can be served within different types of like meal programmings and things like that. And same sort of thing at like a national level. So there's all different points of intervention. And so dietitians are really so much more than just medical nutrition therapy and seeing patients one-on-one. So there's a lot out there. I I also talked to recently somebody that's in school for dietetics and thinking about like what they want to do afterwards, if they want to go on to take the exam to become a registered dietitian, because you don't necessarily need it for everything, but it's certainly extremely helpful to have those credentials. And one of the things that the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics works on is to like maintain the integrity of those credentials, right? The online space is filled with health coaches or wellness coaches. And they may have gone through like, there's also all kinds of like wellness coach and health coach certification programs that aren't accredited. So like I can design a program and give you a certification at the end, but that's not like nationally recognized. It's not accredited by any sort of governing body. It's just like I can put together something on like a Word document and send it to you, and call it a certification. It's true. It doesn't mean that it's recognized by any like I said, like governing bodies like American Medical Association or the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics are two that kind of come to mind because I've been doing some research into both of those standards for something else. But so what the Academy does is work to maintain the credentials of like a registered dietitian is your true go-to source for food knowledge, right? Be it serving large populations, be it like helping to change behaviors and get people to choose healthier foods, knowing which are healthy food options for your particular body, and sort of elevating the dietitian above the health coaches and things that can be found online that aren't certified. There is a nutrition coaching.
Verified things, that you can see on YouTube. It's like, no, some of them are really out there. So
they are, and it's, my general rule of thumb is if you're reading or watching something and it's making you feel afraid to eat certain foods, like it's probably not where you need to be. I know there recently, within the last week, there was the issues of foodborne illness outbreak, right? E. coli outbreak related to McDonald's. And it turned out it was a contamination of their onions, and food recalls like that and foodborne illness outbreaks are a true reason to be afraid to eat certain things, right? Because it's going to actively cause an infection and make you sick. Same thing like what I usually say with food allergies. If you're allergic to it, genuine reason to be afraid of something. But even with the E. coli outbreak, the FDA comes in. They have a process for controlling the situation, and so figuring out what's contaminated, taking it out, right? So extracting it, and then tracking kind of how far the reach is, exactly where it came from, and where else it might show up. So there is a process. The FDA has a process for this, and that's part of the FDA's role is to control foodborne illness outbreaks like that. And the CDC helps as well. But the FDA seemed to put out most of the statements for this one. But this is where people don't trust the government, but it's this is them doing their job, and I know we've talked about it on here before too. Their job is to make sure that manufacturers are producing a quality product, right? And not. I know we've talked about it from the sense of not putting misinformation on food labels. But then this is the other end of it, is making sure that it's not a product that's contaminated with E. coli and things like that, and controlling it, right? So that's the role of the food systems. And one of the other big things, I think it was this week, I feel like everything's blending together. There was also a big protest, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, outside of Kellogg's, led by a food influencer, trying to get Kellogg's to remove artificial dyes from their cereal, saying that it's poisoning our children. The good news is it's not poison. There are certainly people that are sensitive to certain dyes, like especially red dye number 40, right? Like, but not everyone is. That's the thing. And it's not the majority of people that are sensitive to it. Like, if my grandma has it, she breaks out in hives. So for her, that's something to look for. But then, like, for me, it doesn't make a difference. That's where it's like it becomes very individualized, and you can't blanket statement like, oh, this is toxic. It's like, well, then are you going to say peanuts are toxic because some people are allergic to them? It's kind of the same boat. And again, like if somebody's saying things that make you feel afraid to eat, you know you're in the wrong place. Because we don't ever need to be afraid to eat. Well, and this comes up a lot with I feel like I always end up talking about diabetic patients, I feel like. But it comes up a lot with them where they're like, well, I'm afraid to eat anything now that I have diabetes because everything raises my blood sugar. And it's only Wednesday, and twice already this week I've had the conversation of your blood sugar is supposed to go up after you eat. Whether or not you have diabetes, everyone's does. And in this age of continuous glucose monitors, it's easier to see that because you can just scan it or like open it on your phone or however your particular one works. It's supposed to go up after you eat. And then the issue with diabetes is that it doesn't come back down and just stays up because your body's having trouble putting that sugar away, right? And so twice I've explained this week, like, yes, if you check your blood sugar directly after eating, you're going to see that it's high. It's going to be out of range. However, you need to recheck it 2 hours later. And that would give you a good picture of what's actually going on and what your blood sugar control looks like. You're not ever looking for a flat line. Like, I don't have diabetes. I just had a slice of pizza for lunch. And it's like, my blood sugar should go up. Like, that's refined carbohydrates. It is white flour. It was delicious. It was meat lovers. Was it a shining example of what to eat for lunch? Absolutely not. Do I do it every day? Not even close. So it is what it is. But it will. My blood sugar will go up a little bit, and that's super normal. And then it's going to come back down. And then you eat again, right? It's that whole, I know we've talked about it on here too, is working with your body's natural cycles. It's going to go down in about like 3 to 4 hours. My body's going to start to feel hungry again because my blood sugar has come back down. It stayed there for a little bit, and my stomach has had a chance to empty, and it sets off like a hormone cascade to make me feel hungry again. And then I put in more. And I think that's good.
An important part that we sometimes don't realize, that what is normal and what is your body is supposed to be doing. And, we think, overcompensate by thinking, I can't eat anything because of my blood sugar. It's like, no, that's not how how it works. I'm glad you said that because, believe it or not, I think that's one part that I missed. About that, it's normal to have, after you eat, have your blood sugar go up a little. Before we go much farther, I do want to welcome. I see that Takia has joined us, and I believe Country Boy has. So I want to welcome them to the show.
Hello. Welcome.
Hi there. High five, Beth. That's awesome stuff, young lady.
Thank you.
And sometimes with our bodies, we don't know the science behind it, and we don't know why. Like you said one time, Beth, about if you're really tired and sluggish, you might just be thirsty. You might just it's something normal that your body's just needing.
Yeah, and that's always my first question when anybody mentions that they're feeling tired and run down. And I'm like, well, did you drink any water? I feel like we're in this era of jumping to the conclusion that something's wrong with my hormones. I need to get my labs checked. I need another test done. And then when it comes back normal, it's well, it must be wrong. I need another opinion. And so this sort of cycle of all this testing. And I'm like, did you drink water? Or I've had people that come to me and are like, well, I'm having all these cravings. What minerals am I missing? I'm like, how is your stress level? And it's somebody who's stress level is through the roof. I'm like, you're using food as a coping mechanism. Your body, sure, you might be a little bit magnesium deficient because of your stress level, so we can certainly add in some magnesium if it fits with everything else that you're taking, because it's definitely not right for everyone. I'm like, but other than that, you're not at any risk of a deficiency. You just are which is a terrible way to put it, but you are using food as a coping mechanism. So let's identify some other ways to do that. Let's make sure that you're set up with behavioral health. There's so much more to it, and food is not always the answer. And I love that right now, as a dietitian, I'm telling you, food is not always the answer. It's interesting because there's more and more coming out now that IBS, so irritable bowel syndrome, is very much linked to mental health and stress, and flare-ups of IBS symptoms can be linked to stressful times. And so it's one of those it is all in your head in the best way possible, because we recognize the connection, that it's not always something you're eating, that you don't need a super restrictive diet necessarily. And so because if you're now on a restrictive diet and you're stressed about the diet, and then you're all it just kind of creates this awful cycle, that if we can release some of the stress around the food, it can help release other stresses and kind of work in the opposite direction. Very specifically, that's IBS, IBD, so irritable bowel diseases, your Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, things like that, have a completely different pathology. You could have flare-ups related to stress, but there's other things going on too, and it typically requires medication management. So that's a different bucket than just, again, I hate that word, but then IBS, where it's irritable bowel syndrome. You're having whatever your particular symptom set might be. It's usually some sort of abdominal cramping, gas and bloating, issues with going to the bathroom in either direction of too fast, too slow, whatever it might be. A lot of people are like, oh, well, you need more fiber. And that can cause extra problems. So that is not always the answer. There have been a couple people the last few months where I'm like, you don't need more fiber. That's a terrible choice.
I remember one time Ron was on a low-fiber diet, and it was funny because everything is high fiber, and the doctor had him on a low-fiber diet, Yeah.
It's I'm like, eat your white bread, peel your apples, have applesauce instead, nothing with skin. I'm like, it's a completely different animal to do a low-fiber diet, and there's all kinds of reasons to do it. And it's mostly what I do now is focused on diabetes and heart health, and it's interesting because it's essentially the same diet. We focus on it slightly differently, but it's still adequate fiber, protein every time you eat, adequate fat, I should say. It's definitely not low fat, and then watching where it's coming from, and then like low impact movement, right, for the lifestyle end of everything. And so it's really interesting to pretty much talk about the exact same diet all day long and just sort of change the focus a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's the exact same stuff. So it's really not like when people feel like, oh, diabetes is so incredibly limiting. I'm like, it's really not. It just is essentially forcing you to have a general healthy diet.
Yeah.
And it's
Miss Beth?
Yes.
Hi, I'm sorry to interrupt your show in the middle of it here. I just happened to come back. I was live radio station with WFO in Buffalo, New York this morning. I was interviewed by their legend, DJ Lee Spy, and I was interviewed about the Expo and Health Expo that you participated in 2 weeks ago at the Aqua Catering Center. And it's from Buffalo, New York, and he complimented me. He wanted me to share with you how impressed and how impressive you were as one of the primary speakers on the panel. They had specialist panels on the Health Expo from different walks and contribution folks that could do and had expertise in the field of nutrition and health. And you were designated by the team at the radio station as the best speaker for the entire program. Spoke with
listen, they can give me a call anytime they want.
Anything there.
Yes. I love doing that kind of stuff. And like this, like I love doing the podcast. I love doing different interviews. I've been on like a guest on other people's podcasts. There was one Wednesday where that's all I did all day were podcasts.
Oh, cool.
It was so much fun. I'm like, I just get to hang out and talk. I'm like, sure, I'll do. They're like, it's just the two of us. I'm like, I don't care. I'll talk to myself for an hour. It's like I learned how much I can talk to myself when I started doing lectures at like a college level, because you'll be in, it's like an auditorium setup, right? And when I do Albany College of Pharmacy, there'll be, and it's funny because they always end up finding me on social media, so they'll probably hear this one day. There'll be like 80 of them in front of me and 20 online, and eventually I can kind of get them to like engage and ask questions. But when you first walk in, I just preface it now. I'm like, look, guys, I will stand up here and talk to myself for 2 hours, or you can ask questions, completely up to you. I have no problem. But it's funny, I don't like to listen to my own voice back, which is why I'm so glad somebody else produces this show. Yeah.
Well, Beth, I was going to try to clean up until the end. I keep promising myself there's a difference between hearing and listening. Even though I talk a lot, I'm a very sharp listener. But I've been listening to a lot of different informational stuff. But in all of my years of listening, Beth, I have never heard anybody that has that depth of a dietitian, as you said, that explained it so wonderfully as you did. I always remember my granddaddy used to say, country boy, if you're the smartest person on your team, then you need to get yourself some new team members. I'm honored, just like Ron just said, not just to know you, but to be on the same team that you're on. And then Joel always, when he was doing when I did the show with him years ago, he told me it was okay, Beth, if I used the word super friends. And Ron always says that we have no hidden agendas or hidden motives on what we do. You're super friendly and you're super kind, but the information that you're sharing, just even today, I can imagine being at one of your seminars, is just mind-blowing that anybody has that information, that knowledge, and they can break it down the way that you do. And then the last part, and I'll make sure and pass the mic back, because, again, it's just certain things can be learned and certain things can be taught, and there's certain things that one just has. You have it. That's the heart to love people, because the number one concern in the world, everybody knows that part, is health. They keep telling you health is your first wealth. And by you sharing enough information with people and allowing them to know what they need to know in order to stay healthy and grow, it's the greatest thing that I've seen. In closing, that love is not love until one gives. Y'all hear that word? Gives it away. And I pray and continue to pray that the love that you continue to give away comes right back your way. Back to you, Beth.
Well, thank you. That's wonderful. It's, this has been, professionally, the last, 6 months have been very pivotal, shall we say, in terms of changing up what I'm doing. And I'm actually turning away new clients right now. It's an interesting place to be, for sure. But I enjoy the group lecturing, right, where somebody's going to take away whatever piece is most meaningful and impactful to them, right? Because you don't necessarily always know what everyone's coming in with, right? And what their background is like, where they are in their whatever journey space they're on, and there's so many different audiences too, right? Like the radio show or the radio interview for WUFO, which is the name I couldn't remember earlier, and I had a pause. That was really interesting because it's short, right? Here we get an hour. There, I think I had 4 minutes. It's more like a news segment. So when I do live news interviews too on TV, you have 4 minutes. That's it. And I don't get an earpiece. So I'm because usually they'll tell you okay, 30 seconds left or whatever, our countdowns before this show starts. So I kind of am waiting on whoever my newscasters are that I'm with, kind of guide the conversation a little bit, and I have to sort of figure out from their cues that okay, you've got 30 seconds, we need to wrap it up, kind of a deal. Right. So radio interview was much more like that, and then this is so nice because it's a long form, and I can tangent a little bit, which always leads to the most interesting topics. And then when I guest lecture at the college level, that's very focused and super detailed and clinical. It's not stuff we would ever get into on here. So it's kind of cool that way to bring back the highly clinical end of things, and get super specific and help kind of guide and shape the future, if you will. I mean, pharmacists and dietitians, I do both, are my main people I guest lecture to, actually.
That's cool. Yeah.
It's been quite the journey of being a dietitian. A lot of this was not really an option when I was in school.
As I was going to say, did you expect that when you first came into the field?
No.
The direction your business has gone?
I enjoyed, actually, of all things, I wasn't sure if I would end up in clinical, because through a series of unfortunate events, that was actually my lowest grade in undergrad was medical nutrition therapy. I got a C. And so I was actually really concerned about whether or not I would get an internship. Turns out I got my first choice placement. They used to do it, because I think it's changed now, but they used to do it like med school matching, where you put in your top 5 schools and sent out your applications, and then the schools would all review your stuff and say yes or no to you, and you would only know your highest ranked school that said yes. So like I may have gotten accepted to all 5, but I would never know that. I would only know my top choice. So I got into my top choice. And then you never hear about what happened with the rest of them. It's a very strange, convoluted process that I believe has now been redone. So I had this fear in undergrad that I was never going to be able to do clinical work because of that C, and that it would haunt me forever. Because I was a dean's list student. So to me that was like horrific.
Yeah,
it was clearly fine. And I thought I was going to do outpatient nutrition. But like with a health system. So kind of like what I do now by myself. And I thought that was sort of where I would go. I really enjoyed oncology, so working with cancer patients, and thought that that's where my career was going to go once I started doing more clinical work. It's an interesting area of the field because it's so highly impactful, especially I primarily worked with head and neck cancer patients. This is so detailed. It's been so long since I've done this. And so you deal with a lot of different issues between like texture modifications, taste changes. Their needs are extremely different. And so figuring out how to help them actually meet those needs during treatment. And then sometimes they end up on tube feedings. So I really enjoyed that. But then it's kind of following the path of, well, like what's available to me? Where am I kind of being called to? And that's how I ended up in weight loss surgery. That's where most of my outpatient clientele was coming from one particular surgeon. And so within the same health system I was in. And so I worked with his office, and I was like, why don't you just bring me into your office? And because my entire schedule is just filled with your people anyway. And it just kind of, I don't know, it just sort of went that direction. And then I thought it was going to be healthcare administration and getting away from like the individual level intervention, right? Like I was mentioning before. And that was not for me. So I went back to individual level intervention, and then doing things like speaking and podcasting is, it's technically individual level intervention because it's affecting each person individually, and you're not changing like the system, right, or their environment, but you're doing it at a group level. So it's like I can influence many at one touch point versus just one person at a time. So it's just a different approach. For anybody that was super interested in my career path, I forget that people enjoy the background knowledge of like the person, right? Like I don't, I forget that people enjoy that part and getting to know the person behind the curtain, I guess.
No,
yes.
True. I think with all of us, from our school days, the schooling, and where we go from there, it's not always what you had planned, but this opportunity arises. That knowledge increases, and so you end up, growing and expanding yourself, but it's because of the people that you meet, the education that you receive, it evolves. I know with my life, it's just, of course, circumstances just evolve, and you make decisions along the way, and it's just amazing when you look back and say, well, wait a minute, if I hadn't met that one person, if I hadn't accepted that one position that led to this or that, that's life. That's how, that's how it works, it seems.
Yeah. And as much as I want to know how things turn out, that's just the way I am. I'm like, well, give me the end. I was that person that would read the last couple pages of the book just in case. Like, I'm like, give me the end. Like, I'll go through all of the hard parts if I know it all turns out okay. But that's not how it works, apparently.
You have to look back and see, but not sometimes can't look ahead.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't get to know exactly where this ends up. Okay, I guess. But if you can't necessarily fathom it, right? Like if somebody, when I graduated undergrad, had been like, hey, this is where your career is going to go, I'd be like, are you sure? Because that doesn't sound like it's going to work. Like it's not, that doesn't sound, because also like when I graduated, dietitians couldn't bill insurance. So like it would be completely impossible, well not completely impossible, but the way I got my private practice off the ground was because I took insurance. And most of my referrals still come from people that find me on their insurance website.
Sure.
It's my primary marketing is just being listed on the insurance website. And so it wouldn't have even been feasible when I graduated undergrad or when I finished even my internship. It was into when I was working as a dietitian. I don't even remember how long, but like you could bill what's called incidental to a physician. So a physician had to sign off on everything. And then eventually it became that you could do it on your own. And then you could only bill for like diabetes and renal disease. And then now it depends on insurance company, but most of them you can bill for a ton of other stuff. I bill for diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, obesity. I've actually I got somebody approved that they were not obese, but they had abnormal weight gain is the way that we worded it, right? Like they suddenly gained 20 pounds, like in a pretty short amount of time. And so we're working to get it off. And their doctor and I worked together to code it on both sides as abnormal weight gain. That's what it was.
Right.
And so we worked through that. I've done abnormal weight loss or underweight. Like now there's all kinds of things that they're recognizing. Intervention with a dietitian is extremely helpful for bringing this person back to, a state of good health. So it's pretty cool. It's been a cool ride. It's, I don't know if it's considered still like an emerging field of dietetics, but it definitely feels like it in terms of like the health arena, right? Like doctors and nurses have been around a long time. PT and OT have been around for quite a while too. I feel like not everybody knows that speech language pathologists exist, but they do too, and they're amazing.
Right.
And
I mean, look at Ryan going for, because after the stroke, how his swallowing is messed up. Something as simple as that. We never knew that there was a whole field until we were, he was diagnosed with, the problem, and that there is a solution. And I think that's why nutrition and having you with the scientific and medical background is so important, because for years I tried to lose weight, and I would, but I wasn't sure what I was doing wrong or what I was doing right. And so having the knowledge that you have and that my nutritionist has, real life experience, that it has made all the difference. And so, it's just knowing, just the knowledge, I guess is what I'm saying, and the knowledge that you give out every week, it really makes a difference. Because if I knew everything ahead of time, I would have been, size 10 or whatever. But you need that knowledge. Everything, like some people, you had said, if you're the smartest one in the room, if you know everything, then you're in the wrong crowd, because you can't know everything. You have to have other people share information and share their knowledge to make you whole.
Yeah,
Linda,
absolutely.
Beth, what else I noticed too, Linda, is a lot of times we want more for a lot of other people sometimes than they want for themselves. So somehow along the way we got lost in believing, because we've been taught a lot of different things that were wrong. They say seeing is believing. So a lot of people, if they can't touch it, can't see it, can't hold it, they don't really know if they can believe it or not. In the old days, Linda, we used to have a little saying. Y'all remember the commercial? Beth, is it live or is it Memorex? Is that really the truth or is it AI? Do you want to be well? Do you want to be made whole? And here's the one last one. What happens, Beth, now when you show up, people cannot just hear what you say. They can feel what you're saying. It's making that divine connection, because in the old days we had something called CB radios. You and Linda could be talking, but if I'm not on the same frequency to be able to receive, I can't even understand and hear the conversation that's going on right in front of me. But now people can see and hear what you're saying, and they feel like that you're talking directly to them. And because of your knowledge, because of your wisdom, and now in knowing how to administer what you've learned, both from the scientific, both from the dietetic, from all these different fashions, your obedience when you show up allows you to give the solutions and the answers to somebody else's prayers. So high five you in the airways again. Back to you, Beth.
Yeah, thanks. Like I said, it's interesting to do this kind of a format, because people are going to take away whatever's most meaningful to them, right? And shows like today, where I feel like I've touched on everything and it's been sort of rambling. It's like, I don't know, it's almost like more opportunities for people to have takeaways. So it is what it is. There's some days where I get on and I'm like, we're just going to let it flow. Let's see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what comes out. There was something else I was going to add into that, and I don't remember anymore. But, yeah, and I used to joke. I really don't anymore, but I used to joke that I don't use my master's. I have a master's in public health specifically, but I'd argue that's not necessarily true. It's definitely changed my approach. And it's changed it to more of like a lifestyle intervention versus just the food piece, if you will. And it also helps me realize that I did want to do more work at like a broader level than just one-on-one, because there can be a bigger impact. So, I mean, it's there. I do use it, and I think that I'll use it more in the future and going forward. But it was I enjoy learning, right? So it was really cool to go and take those classes and change sort of the view that I had on how to approach health in general. I know what else I was going to add. Linda, you were talking about how you've learned so much, and I was thinking about in terms of weight loss, typically what we're told is like, oh, just eat less and move more. And that's not always true. And I know that I've said on here before too, is often I find, especially women, are over-restricting, and it's actually slowing your body processes down. And so what we usually term as like slowing your metabolism down and making it harder to lose weight. Weight ebb and flow. I was up like 20 pounds. I'm down 5 of them at this point, but so I'm taking it back off because I had to change my workout routines, and didn't change how I was eating because the way I was working out, I was just kind of eating literally everything in sight. But then didn't change that when my workouts changed and got more low impact. And so what I know about myself is it's not like a restriction of my food. In a quote unquote deficit, right? So eating less than I technically need right now, I'm still eating 1,800 calories a day, like, because I tracked it and I try to plan it out, like, so that I know about what I'm getting and then I'm getting everything I need. So not low calorie. And my key is to walk. Like, if I walk enough every day, it comes right off. It's been kind of wild to play around with my particular body, and it's really every body, like every physical body, is a little bit different. And then as we age, especially with women, what we need changes, and how our bodies react to lifestyle interventions, right, diet and exercise, changes as our hormones progress and change through our lifetime. Men, it's a lot more cut and dry because they don't have the same types of hormone shifts as they move through their lifespan. They have some like way later in life into like their 70s and things, but it's not the same. And so there's a couple different things. It depends as always, but there's a couple different things that I usually do with women, like right around like 35 to 40. And I am 35. 36? How old am I? I'm 36. I've reached that age. I was like, wait, how old am I? Yeah, no, I'm 36 now. Apparently. And I'm 36, and so it literally fits with what I normally see in clients and what I've been changing my interventions around for years at this point, right? And I'm like, oh wait, it's happening to me. Like I needed to adjust my workouts for a variety of reasons, and then along with that, change up some of my like approach to what I'm eating. And so again, like calorie levels the same, but changing like where that's coming from a little bit. And working on like meal timing and spacing. So it was, yes, it was move more, but it's not this like crazy high intensity. It's literally like making sure I go for a walk every day. Yeah, it's nothing wild, which I see all the time and tends to be the like norm of like, oh my God, I need to lose weight. Let me start these high intensity workouts that I'm going to do like 3 times a week. And I'm like, well, that's a lot. We don't necessarily need to go that far. Or like, well, I did this when I was in my 20s and it was perfect. I'm like, okay, but now you're 45. Like, what worked for you when you were in your 20s is not going to work for you now. Right. We're just, things are different. So it's been really interesting to like do that myself. Yeah. And it's also like working on like being non-judgmental about it. Like, okay, yes, this happened and it took time to get here. And so it's going to take time to take it off, and like seeing that, like, yes, it does come off. And if it doesn't come off one week, that's not bad. It just is. And you keep going. Because when it comes to weight loss, we expect very, very linear progress of like, okay, I'm going to lose X amount every day or every week. And I've seen... What?
And then you get bummed if you don't, that sometimes your expectation is not realistic.
Yeah, and then you have to remember that you truly should be doing it for more than just the number on the scale. Like, you should be doing it for long-term health and improving your quality of life. So many more reasons than just whatever shows up on the scale. And it's not, I've seen people that don't lose all week and then drop 3 pounds, and then don't lose for a week and then drop 3 pounds. So it's like their weight loss is more like stairs, right? I've seen the people that are your textbook lose a couple ounces every day. Those are few and far between. It's usually stable for a few days, down a little bit. Stable for a few days, down a little bit, like smaller stairs. And then you've got people that like lose for 2 weeks, stabilize for a week, lose for 2 weeks, stabilize for a week. So it's, or like go up 2 pounds, lose 5, go up 2 pounds, lose 5. That usually indicates a little bit of yo-yo dieting if it's going up and then down, even like week over week. We usually dive into more of like, okay, well, like what's really happening? Like, are you out of control and then over restricting, out of control and then over restricting? Most of the time, yes. Every once in a while, no. That's just kind of how their body does it. Yeah, but it's not, you got to back way out and look at the trend over like a month to really get a good picture of what's going on and be like, okay, we get so zoomed in on like, oh my God, did I lose a half pound? I'm like, take a big step back and look at how you've been doing overall. Like, not just this week, but just over the last month, the last 6 months, if we can, like the last year. I'm like, look at all of the change that has happened, and it just creates a totally different picture and usually shows you that nice downward line that we think we're supposed to see. When you zoom far enough out, it's there. Yeah, but I guess this is podcast. Nobody sees me, but yeah.
Weighing myself every day, maybe once a week or every other, because I just don't want to be so hung up on, am I down a pound? Am I down 2 pounds? What if I gained 1? It's like, and because I did that at first, during the summer, and it's like, that's just not, it's not getting me anywhere. So I just keep on doing what, now I am definitely, we're both, Ron and I are both trying to walk a lot more. And so, it may just be taking a stroll through the mall. It may just be, walking someplace instead of sitting,
Yeah.
But Linda, I'm glad you're throwing that bit of humor in there too. You remember how we talked about the other week, how sometimes work in the house becomes work and not exercise if you cannot afford to go and pay to the gym. And Beth, for the little time that we have left, we talked about early in some of the early shows how people really want to change. Some people really want to change. And the ones that do not, I repeat, that do not want to change are choosing to accept what they don't want. So now that we're in the holiday season, it's upon us, whether we want it to be or not, The seasons have changed. The time is going back. Everything around us is changing. My question to you, Beth, is now that people are wanting to see change in their life, they're setting goals, how does one divert around being depressed when their goal is not right on the date and the timeline that they want it to be? Y'all talked about losing a few ounces a day, and some people want to lose X amount of pounds per week or per month. But how does one stay away from backsliding into that depression state of mind and telling themselves that they can't do it while they're in the process, Beth, of trying to do it?
This is where surrounding yourself with positivity can really be helpful, and keeping in mind what your true goal is. And typically when I work with somebody on goal setting, like, sure, a number on the scale is great, but you need to have something else. And like non-scale goals become much more motivating, right? How I was talking about like longevity and quality of life. And the focus is on developing healthy patterns. And then the weight loss is secondary. It is a byproduct of the habits that you've developed. And so the goal is not like lose 10 pounds. When I write out my notes, the goal is like have vegetables twice a day. It's like there are more measurable, tangible things to do. And then you can have that sense of success, and it feels like it's more in your control, even though the weight can certainly be in your control too, depending on everything that's going on. But you know, it feels more in your control. Like, yeah, I can do that. I can have vegetables twice a day. I'm like, cool. Can you make half of your plate vegetables twice a day? I'm like, yeah, sure, I can do that. All right, cool. And then by doing that, you're also reducing the portion sizes of other foods. You're lowering the calorie amount of your entire plate. So if you were overeating at those meals, suddenly you're not anymore. And you're also increasing your fiber intake. You're increasing your intake of vitamins and minerals. But all we've done is set the goal of make half of your plate vegetables twice a day. And so it's much more tangible and manageable than trying to focus on all the other little pieces. And it's not, if somebody's really focused on the number on the scale, it becomes a conversation about not letting that number define you, right? Like you are not better or worse based on the number that shows up on the scale. Like you are still you. And that's something that takes effort, for sure. Of like, oh my God, I'm so horrible. I gained 2 pounds. It's like, no, you're not. You're the exact same person you were before you got on the scale and knew you gained 2 pounds. It doesn't mean anything. And it's like, then you have to retrospectively look at, are you beating yourself up because you feel like you didn't like stick to your diet? Well, why didn't you stick to your diet? Do we need to create a different plan? And working through like, okay, what is actually going on to cause that? And so it's backing it up, looking at what is actually changeable versus just saying you didn't do what you were supposed to and that's why you gained 2 pounds. That's not always the case. Yeah. But definitely like detaching from it is helpful and takes a lot of practice. A lot. Because I feel like it's been so ingrained in us that our like worthiness is tied to our weight, and it's truly not. Well, not at all.
Right. I agree. And Country Boy, Takia had to drop off, but appreciate everyone coming on and just sharing. And really just the more that we know things and that we can apply something as simple as adding vegetables. I mean, I noticed that Ron had gone to the grocery store, so now we have strawberries and grapes and a fresh head of lettuce. And so sounds like a good time for a big salad. And it's just keeping in mind developing healthy habits, not just in your eating, but in so many aspects. Not just sitting, getting up and walking. I've reading one thing about the mobile phone is mobile on purpose. So if you're ever on the phone, just get up and just start walking around your living room or dining room or whatever. But be conscious of things like that. And so I think that's what what I have to do. But Beth, for the last minute or so, can you just give your information, and then we'll reconvene next Wednesday.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am most active on, kind of. I've definitely been taking quite the break from Instagram. It's Beth Wyman _RD as in registered dietitian. You can always find me in the Optimize My Life Facebook group. There is a chat dedicated just to the Nutrition Matters show. And I'm working on my website right now, actually. It's Evolve DN. So Evolve is the name of my business, and then DN as in dietitian nutritionist. So check that out as well. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thanks, everyone. We're just about out of time, and we are out of time. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye, everyone.
All right, bye.